Welcome to Truthful Manipulation. In a world where truth is bent, facts are framed, and influence is too often used without conscience, this podcast stands for something different. I'm Dave Kelsey, along with H. Daniel Mujahid, and together we expose manipulation, defend integrity, and help you see clearly in a world determined to confuse you. Welcome back to Truthful Manipulation. I'm Dave.
And I'm Daniel.
And today we're not here to attack. We're not here to divide. We're not here to point fingers just to score points. Today we're here to say something that should have been said more often in this country. Thank you.
Thank you to the former presidents who stepped forward. Thank you to the men who reminded America that democracy is not a try. It's not a trophy. It's not a weapon. It's not something one person owns. Democracy is a trust. And when that trust is under pressure, real leaders speak.
In episode 74, we pleaded with the former presidents to make a statement. We asked them to step forward. We asked them to remind this country that America is bigger than one man, bigger than one party, bigger than one election, and bigger than one moment of anger. And now that we have spoken, we want to do something that too many people have forgotten how to do. We want to honor the effort.
Because when former presidents speak in defense of democracy, that's not weakness. That's not nostalgia. That's not politics as usual. That's patriotism.
And today's title says it plainly. True Patriots, True Leadership.
These are moments in history when silence becomes more than silent. Silence becomes permission. Silence becomes surrender. Silence becomes the empty space when courage was supposed to stand.
And that's a hard truth, but it is the truth. If you listen to this show, you know that we don't believe in uncomfortable lies. We believe in uncomfortable truths because manipulation grows in silence. Corruption grows in silence and extremism grows in silence. False patriotism grows in silence, and the longer good men stay quiet, the louder dangerous men become.
That is why the moment matters. When former presidents Joe Biden, Barack Obama, George W. Bush, and Bill Clinton spoke about America and democracy, hope, and responsibility, it mattered. Not because they are perfect, not because we agree with every policy, not because they never made mistakes. It's because they understand something most people will never come to understand. They understand.
They understand what it means to sit in the chair where power meets responsibility, the chair where ego must be controlled, the chair where one careless decision can affect millions. The chair where the Constitution is not a suggestion. It's the guardrail.
And when men who have sat in that chair remind America that the country is bigger than any individual, we should pay attention. We should do more than just pay attention.
We should say thank you. Let's be clear. Real patriotism isn't loud. Real patriotism isn't a costume. Real patriotism isn't a flag pin on the outside while the Constitution's being ignored on the inside. Real patriotism isn't screaming America first while treating half of the Americans like enemies.
Real patriotism is deeper than slogans. It's deeper than rallies. It's deeper than applause. It's deeper than party loyalty. Real patriotism is moral responsibility.
That's right. Patriotism is what you do when power tempts you. Patriotism is what you do when your side is wrong. Patriotism is what you do when telling the truth costs you something. Patriotism is what you do when democracy itself needs defending.
The former presidents, they did not speak as Democrats or Republicans first. They spoke as Americans. Now that matters because we are living in a time when party identity has been manipulated into tribal identity. And tribal identity has been manipulated into moral blindness.
This is one of the most dangerous forms of manipulation in America today. When people stop asking, is this right? And start asking, did my side do it? That's the moment truth gets buried.
That's the moment integrity gets traded.
And that's the moment democracy gets weakened from the inside. Because the greatest threat to democracy is not always the enemy outside the gate. Sometimes it's the citizen inside the gate who is manipulated into defending the wrong thing.
Now, some people will say, why should we listen to former presidents? And that's a fair question. We do not believe in blind worship of leaders. We do not believe in giving any man automatic moral authority just because he held office. But experience does matter.
It does. These men have seen the machinery up close. They've seen pressure. They've seen crisis. They've seen intelligence briefings that would keep most people awake at night. And they have dealt with war, terror, economic catastrophe, division, tragedy, and world leaders who do not play by the rules. So when they speak about democracy, they're not speaking from theory. They're speaking from the weight of experience.
And that's why their statements should not be dismissed. They are not ordinary commentators. They are not social media influencers chasing attention. They are not people throwing out opinions for clicks. They are former presidents of these United States.
And that office changes a person. It should humble a person. It should remind a person that power is transparent. It should remind a person that power is temporary. The country is not. The Constitution is not. The people are not. The office belongs to the people.
And when former presidents remind us of that, they are doing something very, very important. They are showing leadership after power.
And that may be one of the purest tests of character. What does a person do after they no longer hold the title? Do they disappear? Do they cash in? Do they stay silent? Or do they speak when the country needs moral clarity?
That is why today we say thank you to our former president. Thank you.
This episode is brought to you by Truthful Manipulation, a roadmap to live by. If you've ever wondered why people believe in things that hurt them, why institutions protect power instead of people, why words are dressed up to hide corruption, and why good people sometimes stay silent when integrity is on the line, then this book was written for you. Truthful Manipulation is not about teaching people how to deceive. It's about teaching people how to recognize deception. It's about awakeness. It's about integrity. And it's about seeing the game before the game uses you. Get your copy of Truthful Manipulation, a roadmap to live by, and start seeing influence with clearer eyes. Because once you understand manipulation, you're harder to control. And now back to the episode. Let's talk about the difference between power and principle, because this is where manipulation hides. Power asks one question: what benefits me? Principle asks a better question: what protects the people?
Power asks, how do I win? Principle asks, what survives after I am gone?
Power looks at the Constitution and asks, how can I bend it? Principle looks at the Constitution and says, this is what keeps all of us free. And that's the difference.
Power manipulates. Principle leads. Power performs. Principle serves. Power demands loyalty to a person. Principle demands loyalty to the truth.
And that's why the former president speaking out together in defense of democracy matters. They represent different parties, different eras, different mistakes, different legacies. But in this moment, they stood on common ground. And common ground is becoming rare.
Because manipulation wants us divided. It wants us suspicious of everyone. It wants us to be angry at each other so that we might stop watching the people using the anger.
And that's the trick. Keep the people fighting each other while the power moves quickly behind the scenes. Keep the citizens emotional while institutions shift the rules. Keep the public distracted while truth gets negotiated. That's why democracy needs voices with weight.
And whether you agree with every one of these former presidents or not, their voices carry weight. Not because they are flawless, but because they have carried the burden of the office. A country does not need perfect men to defend democracy.
It needs principled men willing to speak before silence becomes surrender.
Now let's take a moment and speak more directly. President Biden, we thank you. Thank you for reminding America that democracy is not automatic. It does not protect itself. It does not renew itself without citizens. It does not survive if people treat truth like an inconvenience.
Democracy is work. It's participation. It's vigilance. It's voting. It's speaking. And it's calling out corruption. And it's refusing to let one person become bigger than the system. And President Biden has repeatedly warned that democracy is fragile. That warning matters.
Now, some people do not like being warned. They call warnings fear. They call warnings drama. They call warnings political theater. But sometimes a warning is just a man, can be a woman, but it's a man seeing smoke before the rest of the building catches fire.
That's right. And when democracy is under pressure, the people who warn us are not the problem. The pressure is the problem. The manipulation's the problem. The corruption's the problem. The indifference is the problem. So thank you, President Biden. Thank you for reminding us that democracy is not something we inherit once and keep forever.
It's something we must choose again and again.
President Obama, thank you. Thank you for reminding America that hope is not weakness. Hope is discipline. Hope is courage. Hope is the refusal to let cynicism become our national identity.
And that's very important right now, because cynicism is one of manipulation's favorite weapons. When people believe nothing can change, they stop trying. When people believe everyone is corrupt, they stop demanding better. When Americans believe truth no longer matters, lies get cheaper. And once lies get cheap, corruption gets expensive.
President Obama has always understood the power of hope, not childish hope, not blind hope, not pretend everything is fine hope, but disciplined hope, the kind of hope that says, America has failed before, America has fallen short before, America's broken promises before, but America can still become better than it was yesterday.
That's the kind of hope democracy needs. Because democracy is not just a system of government, it's a belief that ordinary people have the right to shape their future.
And if the belief dies, democracy becomes paperwork, elections become rituals, and rights become words on a page.
Hope is not pretending the house is not on fire.
Hope is picking up the water before the whole neighborhood burns.
Dear listener, let me take a moment to speak from my heart. The Truthful Manipulation Podcast exists because we believe people deserve to understand the forces shaping their minds, their beliefs, their loyalties, and their choices. Every week, Dave and I take on the hard topics: power, integrity, corruption, faith, politics, business, family, leadership, education, and the systems that influence people without always telling the truth. This show is not about left versus right. It's about truth versus manipulation. It's about integrity versus performance. It's about learning how to think before someone else thinks for you. So if the episode means something to you, share it with someone who still believes America is worth living, worth saving. Subscribe, follow, and keep the conversation going, because awareness without action is only half of the road. And now back to the show.
President George W. Bush, thank you. Thank you for reminding America that decency across party lines still matters. That may sound simple, but right now it's almost revolutionary.
We are living in a time when people are being trained to see political opponents as enemies, not just wrong, not mistaken, not people with different priorities. Enemies. And that's dangerous, because once you label your fellow citizens as enemies, almost anything can be justified against them.
That's the path manipulation loves. First it divides, then it dehumanizes, then it justifies, then it destroys. And history has proven that pattern again and again.
President Bush represents a time when disagreement was still fierce, but the basic respect for the democratic process had not completely collapsed. That does not mean that politics were perfect. They were not. That does not mean that decisions were perfect. They certainly were not. But there was still an understanding that the office was bigger than the person.
And we need that reminder. We need leaders who can say, I disagree with you. I may campaign against you. I may challenge your politics, but I'll not burn down the system just because I didn't get my way. That's the difference between a competitor and a destroyer. Democracies can survive competitors. It can't survive destroyers disguised as patriots.
President Bill Clinton, we thank you. Thank you for reminding America that democracy lives through participation, through speech, through voting, through citizens showing up, through the process.
That word matters, process, because manipulations hate processes. Process slows down power. Process forces accountability. Process gives ordinary people a voice. And process says no one gets to simply declare themselves above the rules. That's why authoritarians hate process.
They call it weakness. They call it obstruction. They call it rigid. They call it broken. But what they really mean is this: the process will not let me do whatever I want.
Exactly. Democracy isn't designed to be fast for one powerful person. It's designed to be fair for millions of people. That's the point. That's the protection, and that's the genius of it.
It slows down the dangerous man. It slows down the corrupt institution. It slows down the mob. It slows down the lie. And President Clinton's reminder that democracy depends on people using their voices is important, because democracy doesn't die when someone attacks it. Sometimes democracy dies when people stop participating.
When people get tired, when people check out, when people say it does not matter.
But it does matter. It always matters. Even every voice matters. Every vote matters. Every act of courage matters. Every refusal to manipulate matters.
Democracy is not defended by spectators. Democracy is defended by citizens.
Now let's make something very clear. This episode is not about turning former presidents into saints. We don't worship political leaders on this show. We don't confuse public service with perfection. We don't pretend history is clean. It's not.
Every president has a record. Every president has decisions that can be debated. Every president has victories and failures. Every president has supporters and critics. That's fair. That's democracy.
But here's where truthful manipulation draws the line. There's a difference between criticism and destruction. There's a difference between disagreement and dehumanization. There's a difference between accountability and revenge. And there's a difference between leadership and manipulation. And there's a difference between patriotism and performance.
That is the heart of this episode. We can disagree with former presidents and still respect the fact that they spoke for democracy. We can question their policies and still thank them for defending the system. We can debate their legacies and still recognize their patriotism in this moment.
That kind of maturity is missing in America. Everything's become all or nothing, all good or all evil, hero or villain, my side or enemy. That's manipulation. Because real life is not that simple.
Real leadership is not that simple.
Real patriotism isn't that simple.
If someone needs you to stop thinking in order to stay loyal, they are not leading you. They are manipulating you.
Let me ask you something. Have you ever walked away from a conversation and thought, how'd they get me to agree to that? Have you ever watched the news and felt the words were being used to hide the truth instead of reveal it? Have you ever seen an institution protect power and punish honesty? That's why we wrote Truthful Manipulation, a Roadmap to Live By. The book gives language to what many people feel but cannot always explain. It shows how manipulation works in business, politics, religion, education, media, relationships, and everyday life. But more importantly, it gives you a way forward, awareness with integrity, influence without deception, truth without fear. You can learn more at truthfulmanipulation.com. That's why, truthfulmanipulation.com. Because the truth doesn't protect you until you learn how to recognize the lie. And now back to the conclusion of this week's show.
One of the strongest tests of a leader is what they do after they leave the power and the game. When the title is gone, when the spotlight is dimmer, when the staff is smaller, when the cameras are not waiting every day, when the applause is not guaranteed. Who are they then?
That's a powerful question, because some people only serve while power serves them. Some people only speak when silence costs them. Some people only defend principle when principles protect their advantage. But true leadership doesn't expire when the job ends.
That is why the former president speaking up really matters. Don't you agree? They are no longer in the office, but they still carry the responsibility of having held the office.
Exactly. They know what the presidency means. They know what the transfer of power means. They know what peaceful disagreement means. And they know what constitutional order means. They know what happens when institutions are weakened. And they know what history looks like when good people wait too long.
Leadership after power is not about control. It's about stewardship. It's about protecting the inheritance. It's about saying to the next generation, we did not get everything right, but do not let anyone convince you this system is not worth defending.
And that's powerful because American democracy has flaws, deep flaws, painful flaws, historical flaws, current flaws. But the answers to flawed democracy is not dictatorship. The answer to flawed democracy is better democracy. You don't fix a cracked foundation by handing the house to the arsonist. So what do real patriots do? They tell the truth, even when their side doesn't want to hear it. They defend the process, even when the process produces disappointment. They respect the Constitution, even when the Constitution limits their power.
Real patriots do not confuse loyalty to a leader with loyalty to the country, the United States of America. We, the people. They do not confuse anger with courage. They do not confuse revenge with justice. They do not confuse noise with strength. Real patriots understand that America is not protected by volume. It's protected by value.
And the values aren't complicated. Truth, integrity, rule of law, peaceful transfer of power, free speech, equal protection, accountability, respect the vote, respect the people. That's the architecture.
And once that architecture is weakened, the whole house starts to shake. That's why leadership matters. That's why words matter. That's why statements from former presidents matter.
Some people will mock it. They'll say, words don't matter. But that's not true. Words start wars. Words heal wounds. Words manipulate people. Words wake people up. Words divide nations. And words restore courage. Words matter when they come from people that have carried responsibility.
And in this case, the words were not about ego. They were about America.
And that's the difference between speaking to and being seen and speaking because the country needs to hear it.
Now here's where we bring it back to you, the people. We, the people. Because former presidents can speak. Leaders can warn. Writers can write. Podcasters can podcast. Teachers can teach. But democracy will depend on citizens. It depends on us.
And that's the uncomfortable part. We can't outsource democracy. We can't say, let the courts handle it. We can't say, let Congress handle it. We can't say, let the media handle it. And we can't say, let the former presidents handle it. They all have a role, but so do we.
And our role begins with refusing manipulation, refusing false choices, refusing cult-like loyalty, refusing the lie that cruelty is strength, refusing the idea that truth is whatever one side says it is.
And that's where people get trapped. They stop judging actions. They start defending identities, and they stop asking, is this right? And they start asking, will this help my side win? And that's how moral collapse gets dressed up as strategy.
Truthful manipulation teaches this again and again. Manipulation does not always ask you to believe a lie first. Sometimes it asks you to ignore a truth. Just one, then another, until eventually you cannot recognize yourself.
And that's why we need reminders. We need people to speak. We need former presidents to speak. We need community leaders to speak. We need pastors to speak. We need business owners to speak. And we need citizens to speak. Because democracy doesn't disappear all at once. It disappears one surrendered truth at a time.
So what do we hope people hear in this episode? We hope they hear gratitude. We hope they hear respect. We hope they hear urgency. But most of all, we hope they hear responsibility.
And yes, but this episode's just not about thanking 4 former presidents. It's about calling us back to a higher standard, a standard where patriotism is not measured by how loud you are, but how honest you are.
A standard where leadership is not measured by how many people fear you, but by how many people trust.
A standard where courage is not measured by who you insult, but by the truth you're willing to defend. And that's what America needs.
And later, let us say this clearly. We need more leaders willing to cross the line of party identity to defend democratic principle. We need more citizens willing to say, my side is not always right. My leader is not above the law. My party does not own the truth. My country is bigger than my anger.
And that right there is the beginning of integrity. Because integrity is not what you say when everybody agrees with you. Integrity is what you do when the truth puts pressure on your loyalty.
If your loyalty cannot survive the truth, then it was never loyalty. It was manipulation.
So today, on behalf of this show and on behalf of every American who still believes democracy is worth defending, we say thank you. President Biden, thank you. President Obama, thank you. President Bush, thank you. President Clinton, thank you. Thank you for speaking.
Thank you for reminding us that democracy is still worth defending. Thank you for showing that disagreement does not have to become destruction. Thank you for reminding us that leadership does not end when the title is gone.
Thank you for proving that patriotism can still be principled. Thank you for reminding America that hope is not dead. And thank you for standing on common ground when common ground feels almost forgotten.
And thank you for showing the country that the presidency is not a possession. It's a temporary trust. The office belongs to the people. The office belongs to we, the people. The future belongs to we, the people.
That's the message America needs to hear. And it's the message that manipulation doesn't want us to remember. Because manipulation wants the people confused, divided, angry, distracted, hopeless. But democracy requires the opposite: clarity, courage, unity, participation. America doesn't need perfect men. America needs perfect, principled men. And at this moment, the former presidents acted like men who understood the difference.
Before we close, let us leave the audience with this. Do not wait for history to tell you what courage should have looked like. Recognize it while it is happening.
Don't wait for democracy to be broke. Don't wait until democracy is broken to admit it was fragile. And don't wait until truth disappears to say it mattered. And don't wait until manipulation has done its damage to ask how it worked. Ask now.
Ask now.
Speak now.
Speak now.
Stand now.
Stand now.
Think now.
Think now.
Vote now.
Vote now.
Lead now.
Lead now. Because the future does not just happen. It is shaped by the choices we make while the pressure is on.
The pressure reveals people. The pressure reveals leader. The pressure reveals institution. And pressure reveals citizens. And it reveals whether patriotism was real or just another performance.
So to the former presidents who spoke, thank you. To the citizens who still care, thank you. Stay awake. To the people tired of manipulation, thank you. Keep telling the truth.
And to America, remember who we are. Not who fear tells us to be, not who anger manipulates us into becoming, and not who power demands you become. Remember who you are at your best. True patriotism doesn't bow to power. True patriotism answers to principle.
This has been the Truthful Manipulation Podcast. I'm Daniel.
And I'm Dave. Thank you for listening. Thank you for caring enough to question what you're being told.
Share this episode with someone who still believes that truth matters.
And remember, manipulation loses power when awareness gains courage, truth, integrity, responsibility. That's the road forward. And until next time, stay aware and stay awake. That's this week's episode of Truthful Manipulation. Please comment at truthfulmanipulation@gmail.com. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe at truthfulmanipulation.com. And get a copy of our book, Truthful Manipulation, a roadmap to live by. It'll help you see these manipulations in your life. And once again, thank you, Mr. Presidents.